You join me down here on a Shropshire mere. Stunning lake, about 11 acres, of which I'd probably say 3 acres is covered with lily pads. Real stunning lake. So I got down yesterday afternoon, had a good walk around. We've actually fished this lake last year in the Prologic Social. Unfortunately, I was drawn last out the draw and ended up in a swim sort of in the middle of the lake, which is about 18 foot deep, one they call the winter swim, which wasn't ideal for saying it was August. Like a lot of the fish were sat up in the pads. So this time I've decided to fish pretty much opposite on a swim that commands quite a good bit of water, fishing up to the pads. So hopefully my chances are going to be a bit better this session. Fortunately, we're allowed to use boats on here, which is an added bonus. So I was able to sort of row out, go and have a bit of a lead about, find a few firm spots up against the lilies and drop the baits really, some nice presentation. I was quite confident, to be fair, for last night, but nothing really happened. And then first light this morning, unfortunately, I got wiped out by the roach, one after another, all 3 rods at about 6 o'clock this morning, which was not really what I was after, to be fair. But I've gone back out again, replaced them and put some bigger baits on. Hopefully I can sort of avoid the roach now, but with the weather, they're not the best of conditions, real high pressure, 30 degrees in the day. I think the carp are spending most of the time sat in the pads, and it's pretty much waiting for evening, night time, early morning for a chance, I think. But we'll see what happens.
So I've been really lucky to be invited down here on this session with John. Seen the social the guys did down here last year, and beautiful lake, steeped in history, in the Shropshire countryside. It's about 10,000 years old. So yeah, really good to be here. We got down here yesterday afternoon, went round to the boathouse, picked up the boats, and then brought them back to our swim. John's on the right of me. He's fishing out towards the pads over there. And I've got some pads to the left of me and just snags basically out in front. So it's really handy to have the boat and be able to go out there and sort of hand place your rigs. I think it really makes a difference, especially on this session, because the spots are quite small. You know, when you're feeling around with the lead, sometimes you'll be in really soft silt, then you'll find a nice clean patch. So just being able to go out there in the boat made a real difference, I think, and enabled me to bait really easy and tight around my rigs. So yeah, them 3 rods went out really sweet, really happy with my spots. Came back, we had some food and settled in for the night. So the night went past uneventfully, got up early, sat here just watching the water. The left hand rod pulled up tight, got me in a bit of a pickle, to be honest. So I had to go out in the boat and retrieve it. Turned out to be a tench, so a bit of a nuisance. But as it was still early and bite time, I quickly went back out in the boat, redid that rod, and then come back, settle down again. and again about 10:15 I had another tench on the middle rod. So not ideal, but at least I know them two spots are working, and you know how I'm fishing's right. And I'll make some changes tonight and hopefully keep the rods in the water long enough for the carp to come along.
Well, it's great to be down here at this lake in Shropshire again. I really do love it down here. It's so quiet and out of the way, it's fantastic. But today is just so hot. It's about 30 degrees and I can't bear being in the sun. And for some reason, I've picked just about the only swim in direct sunlight for the full day. So I'm here hiding in the shade a little bit, just trying to get a little bit cool. So I'm set up in the back lake, which is a little bit shallower than the rest of the lake. It's probably about 2.5, 3 acres. So the lads are across there fishing around that side. So I've just got this little bit to myself at the minute. And what I've done is I've had a led around and found 3 spots just tight up to the pads. Because I'm sure the fish at the minute are just sitting in these pads all around this island just to get out of this direct sunlight, because I'm sure it must be a little bit cooler under there than where it is around the rest of the lake. So I found 3 spots I want to fish to, clipped them up so I'm getting tight into the pads. And then last night I went out in the boat and baited each spot. Now I baited each spot quite heavily, not because I think the carp are feeding heavily, because I'm sure they're not in 30 degrees and high pressure, but there's a lot of roach in here and there's a lot of roach activity. So I'm almost baiting to feed off the roach to a degree to ensure that there's still some bait sitting there for when the carp do turn up. So I probably put in about 4k of bait last night over the 3 rods, spread it all around the 3 spots I was fishing, and then came back to the swim, got everything ready, all the rigs ready to go, and then went back round to the other lads to have a barbecue and a couple of beers. But because we was a little bit rushed, we didn't like the barbecue until a little bit later, which means I didn't get into the swim last night until after dark. But all 3 rods seem to go out all right, but you're never 100% sure in the dark. You can't see if the rig's not tangled, you can't see if it's just clipped a pad on the way down or not. But I think they were fishing okay, but for whatever reason, I've not had a bite at all, not had a touch. And it seems that the weather is a little bit against us, but I'm not going to let that deter me, because there was a lot of disturbance last night getting the boat over, getting the boat out and sorting things out. So hopefully I might pick one up today.
So as I mentioned earlier, I've had a bit of a nightmare with the roach. I've had 4 now on the bounce. Rigs I've been using has been like the spinner rig with just a small 15mm boilie on it. So having had them roach, it's time for a change. I'm going to put something a bit more substantial on, and hopefully it'll stop the pesky things taking the up bait. Stepped up the hook size to a J Precision size 2 wide gate, a bit of a noodle kicker, J Precision semi-stiff coated braid. It's quite a silty lake, so I'm going to give it a bit of length on the hook length, so it's not going to sink in. Just whip that on with a loop knot. And if I catch a roach on this, then I'll be gobsmacked. I'll be winding in and going home. Got a little swimmer set up. I'm just tying a snowman. Snowman set up, which consists of an Asbo skins bottom bait and a Asbo Fish Frenzy pop-up. Also, I'm going to change my approach, whereas last night I used quite a bit of seed, and I think obviously that's attracted the roach. I'm just going to just fish the boilie tonight as well. Got some 18mm free offerings, so I'll just stick with that, and hopefully, like I say, I'll put the roach off a bit. And there you have it. See what happens.
Right, so instead of that hinge rig, just to try and deter the tench and the other nuisance fish in here, I've just gone with something with a little bit more of a mouthful for them. German rig, with a pineapple 12mm, I think, topper, and a Creamino hard hooker. So that'll just sit on the bottom, just like a little wafter, and hopefully that'll stop the nuisance fish and keep the rods in the water long enough to get if the carp come along. So I'm going to get these out now, get the new spot sorted, and get them out for the night.
Last night I got back to the swim a little bit earlier from the barbecue than I did the previous night, and there was about half an hour of daylight left. So I managed to get all 3 rods out. I could watch the rigs through the air. They landed perfectly right on the edge of the pads. So I went to bed last night a little bit more confident than the previous night. And I've got to say it paid off for us, because at 1 o'clock this morning I had a couple of bleeps as the bobbin tightened right up, and then I looked at it and I could just see the silhouette of the rod tip going round, and I had a few slow clicks off the tight clutch. Ran out to the pallet. As soon as I hooked into the fish, I could tell it was a decent one. It was just plodding around and keeping low. And eventually I managed to slip the net underneath it, looked in the net, and it was a good fish. You know, it was a 30-pound mirror, 30-pound 4 ounces it weighed, which is my biggest fish from Shropshire. To finally get a Shropshire 30 is, yeah, it's quite an achievement. I was quite happy with that. So we lit up the swim and did all the footage last night so we could get it straight back in the water. I hate retaining fish of any sort of length of time in these sort of temperatures. I was up again at dawn to a roachy type bite on the left-hand rod. So redid that rod and redid the rod I'd captured at night. And I felt pretty confident that the fish had cleaned me out during the night, you know, with getting a roach and a carp. I thought that there weren't going to be a great deal of bait left out there. So I didn't want to go out there in the boat and disturb everything. So I just catapulted a few boilies just dotted around the hook baits where I'd placed them, and went back to bed and tried to get a couple more hours sleep, but it wasn't long before the rod was away again. This time it just managed to make it into the pad, so it was a bit of a war of attrition, just holding on to it, giving it steady pressure just to try and ease it away from the pads. And eventually I could feel it kicking. It all came, and just by walking backwards, keeping a tight line on it. And this fight was completely different to the last one, because all the fight was out, that fish trying to get back into those pads on a longish line. And I just held firm, let the rod do the work, because the rods I'm using now are quite soft through-action rods, almost old-school rods. But I just held on to the fish, just let it have a little bit of line when it tried to burst off, but not give it too much. And eventually I got it under control and landed my second fish of the session. Well, it's nice to catch another one. Not quite as big as the 30 last night, but I'm very happy with this one, especially after the first night blank. And we really have been struggling against the conditions in 30 degrees heat, but it's always nice to finish off with a fish. And it's not the biggest, at 17 pounds, but still, in these conditions, I'm very happy. So really pleased with those 2 fish last night, even though when I planned this trip, I was expecting a few more, but the conditions have just been against us. Really gutted for Harley losing a fish this morning, and I think John had a couple more roach, that's it. But Harley's still there now with his rods out. John had to shoot off about 8-9 this morning, so he's gone, so there's just me and Harley with the rods out. So you never know, there's a chance of a fish now, but it is absolutely roasting, and I doubt there's going to be a great deal more action, but it's been great to come down to this lake again. Really do like it down here. I like the way it's just so quiet and so out of the way, and it's been a good little session. You know, we've had some nice food at the barbecue, a couple of fish, and just enjoyed a few days out.
So, final morning now. Been very uneventful up until this morning. About 20 to 5, I had an occurrence on the right-hand rod. Got out the bivvy, went down to have a look, see what was going on. Big drop back, so I picked the rod up, lifted into it, wound down, and unfortunately it looks like I've been cut off. Got a big pigtail in the line, so it's obviously been grating on something there. So a bit gutted about that, but that's just how it goes. Still a little bit of time left, so you never know, might be able to nick one before we go. But on a good note, Ed round the other side, he's had a couple, so you know, it's not all doom and gloom.
Oh, Ed.
Carp. I thought my chance had gone completely. It's now, was it about 1 o'clock in the afternoon? Absolutely red hot, 30 degrees. and we're just finishing a few bits of filming. I've just hooked another one. He's right on the edge of the pads, so I'm having to walk backwards just to get him out. He was stuck in there for about 20 seconds. I've now got him moving. He's out on the top, just milling around on the surface. That's better. We're about 10 yards away now. He's coming straight towards me. I don't know if he's big or not. He felt very powerful when he powered into the pads, but now he's kind of kiting towards me a little bit. It's a cracking action on these rods. Taking me right the way back to the 90s. When all rods were through action and quite soft. It's perfect situations like this when I've got a quite fast fish lunging and close. It's quite awkward to net here because my net's holding up with some pads. I'm trying to net in between the two rods. Come on. Well, this was rather a surprise. Just packing down, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It's absolutely scorching, and the middle rod rips off with this little character on. Yeah, this session has turned around quite a lot from blanking for the first 24 hours and getting 3 fish this morning. So happy things have changed and happy to have caught.